What if I told you that telling the truth, even with the best intentions, can still cost you? That in rooms where power sits, speaking up can feel like stepping onto a landmine. You want to advocate, you want to correct, you want to challenge the status quo, but your body says, play it safe, keep the peace, don't make waves. This episode was born from a conversation I had recently with a client who has recently stepped into a VP level leadership role. After a session, or during a session, I should say, we had a conversation. And he said to me, I want to speak up, but I don't want to burn bridges. He continued to say, how do I say what needs to be said and still build trust with the people above me? He added, I don't want to be seen as a problem just because I see the problem. And I knew we needed to talk about this. And I knew I needed to devote an entire episode just to this topic because he is not alone. And maybe neither are you. And so that is the foundational reason for this bonus episode of Leadership Lessons with Dr. Fredrick D. This is the podcast where we grow from the inside out. And today's bonus, how to speak truth to power without becoming a target. Here's the truth. Courage is messy. Messy boots. Speaking up can feel risky. Telling the truth in rooms where silence is rewarded takes a level of emotional skill that most leadership books don't teach. Especially when you are new in your role, still earning credibility, trying to build relationships with senior leaders, and wrestling with the balance between being respected and being real. Let's be honest. Navigating ego, hierarchy, and hidden politics can leave even the most brilliant leaders second guessing their voice. But see, here's the deal. Leadership requires truth telling. Change requires challenge. Equity requires discomfort. And if we're serious about our impact, not just image, then we need to talk about what it takes to show up with clarity and courage without sabotaging our progress. So, how do you speak with power to power without losing your seat at the table? That's what we're digging into today. If you've ever stayed silent when something in your gut said, say something. If you've ever spoken up and then felt the slow freeze of being labeled difficult. If you've ever been called too direct, too passionate, or not a team player, simply for telling the truth. Yeah. I have been labeled all of these things. Difficult, resistant. I've been told I don't fit into the culture. I've been told all of these things. Mm-hmm. Rarely am I told, oh, you're too passionate. Usually I'm labeled as aggressive. That's what I get. I'm aggressive. I'm not passionate. Yeah. Simply for laying out the truth, laying out the facts, laying out the data as it is, simply for staying rooted in reality. I have been there. That is why I wanted to quickly put this episode together, because we're not just here, we're not here to just talk tough. We're here to lead smart. So we're going to get into the strategy. We're going to get into self-trust. we're going to get into survival. This is how emotionally intelligent leaders challenge systems and stay standing. So let's go. We often talk about leadership as being visionary, bold, inspiring. We lift up stories of disruptors, change agents, and innovators. But what we don't talk about enough is the emotional tax of being a truth teller in systems that prefer silence, especially when those systems weren't built for you. Because the moment you step into leadership as a marginalized professional, especially in traditional power structures, you carry more than just your expertise. You carry history, you carry projection, you carry the burden of being both visible and invisible at the exact same time. Let's be real. You might be the only one in the room who sees the issue for what it is. You might be the first person to say out loud what everyone else is whispering in the hallway. You might be the one who feels the pressure to represent an entire group while still trying to find your own authentic voice. And in that space, telling the truth doesn't just feel risky, it feels exhausting. Because you're not just advocating for a better policy or pointing out a missed opportunity. You're navigating layers of leadership. You're navigating the truth you want to tell, the image you're trying to maintain, the bias you're managing silently, and the fear that being honest might confirm someone's unspoken stereotype about you. See, that's where emotional intelligence becomes more than just a leadership tool. It becomes your shield, your compass, and your superpower. Let's break this down. To speak truth to power in a room that wasn't built with you in mind requires the ability to, number one, read the room. Not just the words, but the body language, the energy, the silence, the subtext, to know when people are resisting your message or resisting you. See, you've got to be able to discern that. Number two, ground your voice. To speak not from reactivity, but from clarity. To stay anchored in your why, even when the air shifts and the eye contact drops. Steadfast. Hold on to it. Number three, protect your peace. To understand that your job is to offer the truth, not to carry everyone else's discomfort about it. See, you have to set boundaries so you don't become the emotional processor of other people's fragility. That's their business. That's their cross to bear. That's their burden to carry. Next, deliver the truth with clarity and strategy. Don't water it down. Don't weaponize it, right? I'm gonna keep this as an ace in my pocket that I'm gonna slam on the table when it's time. No. You want to deliver the truth in a way that moves the conversation forward without burning yourself out in the process. And let me say this very, very, very clearly. As clear as I can say it. Being honest doesn't always feel safe. Especially when you look like me. Especially when your lived experience is already seen as biased, angry, too much, or not objective. When they've already made opinions about you before you stepped into the room. But here's the reframe. Being honest doesn't have to be reckless. Being courageous doesn't have to mean being a martyr. You can speak up strategically and still lead with integrity. So this is the skillful part. And when you do it skillfully with emotional intelligence and grounded presence, Now the truth telling becomes a form of power stewardship, not self-destruction. See, because emotional intelligence isn't about playing it small, it's about playing it smart. It's how you protect your voice, preserve your purpose, and push for change without losing yourself in the process. Now, let's dig into what that actually looks like. Let's break this down. Why is speaking truth to power so hard? That's the question. The answer is because power is often protected, not by reason, but by defensiveness, silence, and fear. So when you challenge someone in a position of authority, especially within systems built on a hierarchy, you're not just questioning a decision. You're disrupting their sense of certainty and often their unconscious identity as the expert. See, in doing this, you may unintentionally threaten their ego, their status, their control. Okay, so you know how we get down over here? We always get into the neuroscience. Okay, so here's the neuroscience part. According to Dr. David Rock, founder of Neuro Leadership Institute, the brain processes social threats like embarrassment, criticism, or being contradicted in the same way, much like the same way it processes physical danger. So he has something called the SCARF model. And SCARF is an acronym. It stands for status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. And this model explains how people often experience feedback or disagreement as a threat to their status and certainty, activating the small neural pathways associated with the fight or flight response. So you got to keep this in mind. So when you speak truth to power, even gently, you might trigger a stress response that results in sudden tension in the room, defensiveness or interruption, dismissive comments, or worse, retaliation. And they'll mask this as professional feedback. The Harvard Business Review also documented this phenomenon. In a 2018 study on workplace silence, the study found that employees often withhold input from those empowered due to a climate of fear, particularly in organizations built on hierarchy that also have poor psychological safety. People don't just stay silent because they lack ideas. They stay silent because they fear punishment, perception, or being misunderstood. So if you've ever walked out of a meeting feeling punished, iced out, or branded as difficult for speaking up, I know I have. You're not imagining it. You're not being too sensitive. You're reading the real emotional dynamics of power. And this is where emotional intelligence becomes your most strategic leadership asset. Because emotionally intelligent leaders don't just say what's true, they say it in a way that it can be heard, received, and remembered. Emotionally intelligent leaders know that telling the truth without strategy is honesty. Telling the truth with strategy is leadership. That's the difference between being right and being effective. Because we're not just here to speak the truth, we're here to create change. So, let me give you 3 truths about Speak It Up that will reframe how you lead, especially when the stakes are high. Truth number 1, timing is tactical, not weak. This means you don't have to say everything in the moment to make it meaningful. Sometimes pulling someone aside after the meeting preserves dignity and opens the door to real dialogue. Okay? You've got to discern, do I need to put this out in the meeting in front of all these people? Or should I give this one particular leader a heads up before I do so? You're still on the right path. You're just choosing differently. Sometimes waiting 24 hours gives you time to ground yourself, so you respond from wisdom, not woundedness. You protect the message by choosing a moment when people can actually hear it. Number 2, framing builds bridges. How you frame your truth matters. Instead of saying, this process is broken and unfair, try saying, here's what I'm noticing. Here's how I think it's impacting our outcomes. I like to explore a more equitable approach. You're not watering down the truth, you're anchoring it in a shared purpose and outcomes. You have reframed it. This keeps you from being dismissed as emotional or complaining and reframes you as a strategic thinker. The third truth, your safety matters too. Some environments are simply not safe for truth telling. In those cases, document, protect yourself, seek some allies, and if needed, escalate through formal channels. Not solo, but with support. Remember, silencing yourself isn't noble if it costs your well-being. You protect your voice, your values, and your longevity as a leader. Here are 5 change moves to help you speak truth to power with strategy, not self-sacrifice. And keep in mind, these aren't just tips. They're actual survival tools for emotionally intelligent leaders navigating high-stakes environments. Change move number 1, ground before you speak. Before you say anything hard, check in with yourself. Breathe, pause, anchor. Ask yourself, what am I actually trying to shift here? What tone, body language, and timing will serve that outcome best? This activates your impulse control, which is critical when emotions are high and stakes are real. When you're grounded, you're less likely to sound reactive and more likely to sound intentional. Take 90 seconds before a meeting or a confrontation to center yourself. Try this breath work pattern. Inhale for 4 seconds. Hold it for 4 seconds. Exhale for 6 seconds. Visualize your goal and rehearse a calm tone, not just your words. Change move number 2. Speak to outcomes, not just emotions. People in power often tune out emotional appeals, especially if they feel personally implicated. That doesn't mean emotions aren't valid. But if you want to be heard, lead with impact. Use data. Link your point to a business goal, a patient outcome, retention, equity metrics, risk mitigation. Connect it to something important. Instead of saying, this policy is unfair, say something like, here's how this policy might be impacting staff morale or productivity. If we address it, we can reduce turnover and build a more engaged team. You could also use the so what test. After stating your concern to yourself, say, so what's the impact if nothing changes? That's the point you lead with. Change move number 3. Ask powerful questions. Instead of confronting someone with accusations, invite them into reflection. Questions disarm defensiveness and build psychological safety. Try asking questions like, what data are we using to guide this decision? How are we considering equity in this process? Is there a way to include more voices in this conversation? These questions shift the energy from calling out to calling in. So you'll write two to three go-to questions that align with your values and use them consistently. Questions like these position you as thoughtful and strategic, not combative. Change move number 4. Build coalition, not isolation. See, telling the truth alone can make you a lightning rod. But truth, when echoed, becomes harder to dismiss. So, rally the troops. Consult with colleagues, mentors, or affinity groups. Sense check your perspective before going public. Ask others, have you noticed this too? You're trying to gain momentum. You're trying to gain support. There is strength in numbers. And the more people you can get to see your point and to come to your side gives you more credibility. So when you speak with the backing of a coalition, your message carries more weight and you carry less risk. Don't just build relationships when you need support. Invest in trusted allies before the hard moments. That way you're not isolated when the time comes. Number 5. Know when to document, escalate, or exit. You have to be real. Sometimes, despite your best efforts, the room just isn't safe. If retaliation, gaslighting, or reputational damage starts creeping in, don't ignore it. Start documenting everything: dates, decisions, emails, reactions. Know your rights and your reporting channels. Who do you go to in these instances? Is this a compliance issue? Am I in a union? Do I take this to my union leaders? Know your reporting channels. And also, most importantly, protect your peace. There is no job, there is no title, there is no seat at the table that is more important than your dignity or your mental health. Trust me, I know. I left an employer after 14 years because of the environment and what it was doing to my mental health. I'm sorry. This place is just unsafe for me. You have to protect your peace. Create a safety folder. Digital, physical, got to keep receipts, notes, context. It's not paranoia, it's preparation. It's preparation. Bottom line. Speaking truth to power is not about winning arguments. It's about building credibility while staying grounded in your values. You don't have to choose between your voice and your career, but you do have to choose your strategy. Let's make your leadership both powerful and sustainable. Here's your coaching prompt for the bonus episode. What truth have you been holding back because you're afraid it'll make you a target? Now ask yourself, what's the cost of silence? What would it look like to speak that truth with wisdom, not just frustration? Who could support you in doing it? Because here's what I know. You can be both strategic and sincere. You can tell the truth and keep your peace. You can speak up without tearing yourself down. And when you do, you learn to hold your power without burning out. That's not just leadership, that's liberation. If this bonus episode resonated, I want you to share it with the leader in your life who's navigating hard truths. We need each other. And if you want help building these skills, I offer coaching and consulting for emotionally intelligent leaders who are ready to create real change without losing themselves in the process. Email me, info@mrchangeyourlife.com. Follow on Instagram and Facebook at Dr. Fredrick D II. Like, subscribe, and leave a review. And be part of this growing community of truth telling, being heart-centered leaders. Next time on Leadership Lessons, episode 10, the cost of being the strong one, leading when you're tired of holding it all together. We're getting honest about the weight of leadership, performance pressure, and what it really means to rest without guilt. Until then, change is constant, but your growth, that's intentional. I'm Dr. Fredrick D II, and this has been your Leadership Lesson.